All right, good evening.
Welcome, everybody. How's everyone doing?
I believe we're doing fine. I can speak for myself. I'm doing great.
Good.
But
Good.
yeah, are we ready? Is there anything that you need to announce?
I don't think so. We're ready to get underway, and I know you guys, I think, have one article that you're intending to present.
We do. We figured we could start with that. What do you think?
We'd be fine. I know you asked us to start first.
Oh, we did.
Last week, and so we're prepared to go first again this week if you'd like.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't we mix it up and we'll go first this time?
Okay.
How about that? Great. So Article 117. All right, this is the first discussion. So this is opening up Article 117. It's our first time presenting our initial proposal. So this is exactly the same as our initial proposal. Article 117 is on initial salary placement for vocational experience. So some of our members teach CTE classes, and their experience is a little bit different than a typical classroom teacher. And so we've had a longstanding article that dealt with how they should be placed for their initial salary. And over time, our understanding is that some ambiguities and complexities have arisen. And we added two new sentences that sort of dive into the weeds. Part C, an industry certification in the field in which the member is being hired will earn 750 hours, which is 750 divided by 15 equals 50 credits. And then Part E, if an industry certification in the field in which the member currently works is obtained after initial employment, the employee will move 2 lanes if hours qualify them to move to in 1 year. Assumes employee was not able to turn in credits along the way. So my best understanding of the addition of this is it is simply solidifying what has already been occurring as discussed between AEA's former and long-standing UNISERV director, Debbie, and Peggy. So my understanding is these two sentences are just putting into contract what is currently practice, what is current practice.
Thanks, Christian. Certainly we may have some additional questions about some of the specifics here, but one question that I have in reading the proposed language is simply if there's, from the association's perspective, an agreed upon or already established definition of industry certification.
By a head shake over there, I see no. So this is if there is an opportunity to better define what industry certification is, that is certainly something that we would appreciate coming back our way. If things need to be specified a little bit better, then we would certainly appreciate that.
Yep. Not trying to play gotcha, just trying to understand, what the intent is. My normal explanation for the questions here.
Yeah, I mean the intent is to give people with sort of non-traditional routes of teaching, especially in career and technical education, some equivalent or equitable route to salary advancement. So that's the motivation.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. And I guess maybe just one follow-up question on that. So, subject to a mutual understanding of industry certification from the association's perspective, are there any certificates or certification programs which might not fit that definition, that would be perhaps too de minimis or tangentially related? I'm just wondering if there's any definition around what kinds of programs might fall within or without that definition, subject to our agreement about what that is.
Again, we are happy to engage in a discussion about what the details of that might look like.
Thanks, Ryan. Uh, Question for the association. It seems like in paragraph C, um, that the language is implying that every industry cert would receive the same recognition for hours or credit for it. Is that the intent of the language from the association?
I believe the intent is that something that is in some way equal or equitable to what a teacher would have to go through to get and further their certification process. So, I mean, that's my understanding of the intent, though I open it up to the field to see if someone can clarify that.
It has been a case by case basis as people have brought certifications forward, and the integrity and intensity of the to what it takes to reach that certification has been outlined and discussed with talent management. That is the deciding body that has selected what programs are acceptable as the same with certification. With that, the what has been happening is an unknown number of hours being credited to that. And that's where the discussion between Peggy and Debbie was that if we have something that's a certificate but doesn't have a specific number of hours, the district says this is a rigorous program. You are required to do this, but there's no clock hours, credit hours, like ASE certification for automobile repair, for one. It's a program, it's rigorous. You have to do a lot of work to complete it, but it's not time specific. That's the type of program that was accepted by the district as certification towards a program that didn't have any hours to it, knew it was rigorous, knew it was going to be beneficial to the students in the classroom, learning from someone who has gone through that program. And that's where this was attached a number of times, solidified. I can't remember. The last one was last year. That's why the language came forward in this contract suggestion. Debbie said, Peggy and I talked, put it forward.
Thanks, Courtney. And that actually addresses my question very well, which is we have a process for other staff, for our 2,900 other teachers, where we look at the academic credit. They submit the request for the credit in advance. That gets evaluated to see if it's eligible, and then teaching and learning or talent management approves it so that that gets documented. They know they're going to get the credit when they complete the program. The reason I asked the question here is it seems like we know that every cert will fit perfectly into this box that we've built maybe for a few in the past, but that doesn't mean that we might see certs that don't line with that in the future. And I think it might put us in the wrong direction if we try to reinvent the wheel here in terms of saying every cert's going to get these credits. How about we just do what we do with every teacher and look at the program and figure out how many hours they get and thus how many credits they get for it. It seems like we're putting a lot of unknowns into a very specific box here by identifying how many hours every cert's going to have would be our concern.
Thank you, Andrew. I just wonder if there is a way, certainly our attempt to put into contract language what has been negotiated on a case by case basis so far. I wonder if there is a way to put it into the contract so that it doesn't have to be on a case by case basis. Just that going back to Ryan's focus on the intent. The intent was to maybe streamline things a little bit. And if this isn't the way to do it, I wonder if there is a way to do it.
I think that's really helpful. That helps us understand the proposal a little bit better, and we can have some more conversation about it with the benefit of the presentation and the comments tonight. So appreciate that. All right. I think it's pointing at me, the possession indicator on our side. Okay, there we go. So we will pass our initial proposal on 205 health benefits. All right, hopefully everyone's got a copy. Please just let me know, give me the high sign if we need more copies. This is the district's initial proposal. So this is the same proposal that you would have seen as part of the initial proposal packet back in November. And to again speak to the intent and the thinking behind some of the proposed changes and build on some of what was shared back in November. Just to kind of walk through the proposed changes, obviously in the first paragraph, the district is proposing at this point a $50 per month increase monthly per eligible member, 0.75 or greater FTE who elects health coverage. As we discussed a little bit in November, this initial proposal is in recognition of the generally rising costs of healthcare and health benefits, and it was very purposefully done by the district in recognition also that my understanding is historically the initial proposal from the district would not include a proposed increase in the monthly contribution. So this is an attempt to both make a proposed increase in recognition of the cost and importance of the health benefit, but also wanting to make the point that additional increases, if any, would need to really be built on the back of a business case for the health benefit provider really needing those funds in order to provide the quality of benefit that the association and the district both want for teachers. So that is the proposal on the increase. Moving on into the second paragraph, the proposal to strike PEHT for language identified health plan is an attempt to make this language evergreen, as we've tried to do in other articles. It doesn't affect a change other than makes the language more flexible and less in need of future potential negotiation should anything change. To continue on, the proposed new third paragraph would allow the district to request information to evaluate the association's health benefit provider, as the district is currently doing for ASD's health plan. So this provides a pathway to make that request to obtain industry standard information to try to perform an accurate and valuable analysis of the plan. excuse me, I skipped right over the reference that's proposed to be stricken to the high deductible health plan. That's a redundant reference farther down the same page. Last paragraph, you'll see the same language echoed there. So this is a cleanup proposal. Thank you, Marty. In terms of the proposal for a penalty under A here, this language is probably frankly responsive to a previous concern among the parties. We've run to ground that there is no record available to the district of this having been an issue in anyone's recent memory at minimum. And as a general principle, the district doesn't feel like liquidated damages provisions are probably the best or the right approach to contract enforcement. And so proposing to strike that language. Flipping the page. No, sorry. And I'm doing a terrible job of following my own notes. I'm getting corrections here from the left and the right as warranted. I've skipped over the proposal to change the deadline for the health plan provider to send a monthly invoice in addition to a change file to the district's benefits department by the 20th day of each month. The proposal is to change that to the 10th day, and that proposal is responsive to the experience that the district's been having of getting some incomplete information from PEHT, which requires longer than a submission date of the 20th of the month to process. So this would create a little bit more runway for the timely processing of the information received from the health benefit provider. Finally, flipping the page here, the proposed language at the top of the second page of the article, proposed change to the language election to enroll versus date of hire or on the first day of the month if the member is hired on the first working day of the month. This proposal is driven by the experience and demonstrated history of members who may choose to enroll in the health benefit later in the year, and PEHT's practice of then charging a not insignificant amount of employee health contribution premium at the point of election, to the extent where the arrears could essentially consume potentially a paycheck for a period of time in which the member didn't have and potentially did not realize that they were eligible for the health benefit. That seems frankly inequitable on the one hand, and really view that as the district views it as a plan design problem that we're attempting to address here through proposed contract language. So that's the explanation and reasoning behind the proposed changes in 205.
Before I pass this on to any of my team members who would like to ask questions, one thing that one change that you made that you didn't mention is striking every mention of PEHT and replacing it with health plan provider. Can you speak to the district's intent in doing that?
Yep, and I probably failed to sufficiently highlight that that's a change not only in the second paragraph, but throughout the article. And again, the same rationale is that this is an attempt to make the language evergreen. Simply, if there is a health benefit, there will be a health benefit provider, and whomever that may be, this language would be evergreen. So this is consistent with the effort we've made in other articles to try to have evergreen language wherever we can.
I guess I was confused by the term evergreen. So, okay, I understand now. Yeah. So I will offer my team any chance to ask any questions on this.
Can I go a quick one? Just real quick, I want to just get this out there. Is it the intent of the district to pull AEA out of the Public Education Health Trust during bargaining?
No, that is not the intent of the district.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan, for this proposal. It saddens me that the AEA team did not know in advance some issues with timeliness of reporting information to PEHT. So it's interesting that you want to take out the penalty, because I wish we had added one, and that is the timeliness notification of members' ability to access health insurance. You noted that you want to take out, you want to try to control how our plan operates on the second page. And there's two issues with that. Many of our potential PEHT participants are not able to enroll in PEHT because PEHT is not given that information in a timely manner. So the cost to that member is actually a reflection of ASD's practices and not PEHT. And second, that same change is a considerable, my understanding, I could have that wrong. I'm sure Marty could speak to it better than I can, but it's my understanding that the ability to elect at any time during the year puts a catastrophic cost to the plan, which ASD is currently experiencing within their own. And so, if I could elect to elect coverage at any time in the year, why would I choose? Why would I not wait till I need it? So that's from my understanding, that is a common practice that people need to enroll at the beginning and pay back to the beginning. And it is my understanding that PEHT, when they are given notification of a new employee mid-year, does not charge all the way back. It's just those that should have been given the opportunity to enroll at the beginning. I'll clarify. If I am a new hire in August, then I have a right to my health insurance to begin in August. But if ASD does not notify PEHT until November that I was eligible to have coverage in August, then you're absolutely right. PEHT needs to be compensated for that all the way back to August, because that's when their eligibility began. If a teacher is hired in November, then that is when their eligibility begins, and that is when PEHT would start that cost structure. It would not go back to August. So I think that you may not have all the information, so I hope that helps.
Corey, I appreciate your examples. I think there are two different distinct issues that have been surfaced here, and I want to take a moment to see if I can differentiate between them. So right now, let's say a new member is hired at the beginning of the year, and they get their form that allows them to elect coverage or waive coverage, and they make an election, right? That's not somebody we're talking about here. Right now, there is a loophole that allows them to essentially not respond to that, right? So they've been given the information, they've chosen not to respond. Most plans will have a 30-day or a 45-day qualifying period where you can elect that coverage, and if not, you default to waiver. Right now, if somebody makes no choice, and then in February they decide they want to select coverage, they can elect it. The district is required by PEHT to make a contribution for them all the way back to the beginning of the year, even though they haven't had insurance from August through February because they haven't elected it. And that employee, let's say they choose Plan C and they choose Employee Plus Family, which is an employee premium of close to $900 a month. They're now going to be charged for August, September, October, November, December, January, February for that premium. That is a enormous hit to someone's paycheck. And they don't often realize the implications when they're doing that mid-year, which is partially our motivation for changing this language to when they elect coverage, we will begin making payment and they will begin making their employee premium portion payment the first day of that next month. And that's pretty typical language in plan design documents. So it's not something strange that we've invented. I mean, this is pretty common in the industry. PEHD certainly has an interest in having both the district and the employee be on the hook all the way back to the beginning of the year, right? Because that's revenue for the plan, but that's not beneficial to that individual employee. That's beneficial to PEHT. And that's what there is a cost to that individual employee in that scenario. Now, the other thing that you referenced was what happens when somebody is not notified, not given that form and the option to elect coverage. And we did have, and we'll acknowledge, some unique situations at the beginning of this year. This isn't a persistent problem. It was a problem at the beginning of this year with the way we coded some employees differently in the system. They didn't get picked up on the report. And so that information wasn't getting communicated to PEHT. We have spent considerable amount of time meeting with the association and with PEHT to work out a new plan for how that information will be communicated and duplicate the effort to make sure that if the employee doesn't elect coverage, there is still a backdoor way that PEHT is notified that there's an employee who's eligible so they can also approach that employee to make sure that they make an election. So I feel like the singular issue we had this year, we have worked very hard to resolve. And my understanding is Rhonda from PEHT was pretty excited about the talent management proposal for how that would be addressed. So I want to differentiate between those two different scenarios. The language here is really speaking to that first issue, not to the issue that you were bringing up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all that, Marty. I wish that my communications with Rhonda was that she did express more excitement about her relationship with ASD. That is not what I hear from her. She's still frustrated. And I think that although it was exacerbated this year, what you're describing, I think she's had a consistent issue with that over the years. So perhaps your new systems in place will accommodate that. I just want to two things. One is if a member somehow slips through your onboarding process and you're not making sure that they check that form, that's not on us, that's on you. So you should make sure that they know they have a right to insurance, what insurance and who to contact, and that you get that form back. Like that's not our form, it's your form. If we had a process for that, or if that was PHT's responsibility, then I'd be talking to PHT. But that's your responsibility as the employer to make sure that documentation is properly addressed in the onboarding process. And second, if they did slip through and in February they decided they wanted health insurance, that is their choice and they don't have to. They can wait and open enrollment is in May and get it for the following year. I totally agree with you. It is a heavy cost on any employee who has to back pay health insurance any considerable number of months. I mean, it is, and it's a big, we hear about it all the time. So anything we can do to streamline that process, the association is all in favor of. What the association is not in favor of is trying to dictate how PHT operates their plan. They've been very successful, very solvent in how they administer this. And I think they just need more support from ASD and making sure that every employee has access and gets their eligibility information in a timely manner. I think we're all on the same page in that regard.
Understood. And I don't want to belabor the point, but of the list of names that both PHD and the association have provided to us this year as examples of folks who were missed in the process, I think in the large majority of cases, we discovered when we ran it to ground that it was the employee did have the document. We could show electronically that they had to open it and they had not elected. And as long as that is an option for employees, that will persist. And so I do just want to acknowledge that the association has sometimes tried to paint this issue with a broad stroke, but there are multiple factors here, and sometimes it's the employee, not the district, that it is not has not taken action.
I agree, Marty. It is a broad stroke, but I will say AEA is in the middle. Like, you guys do your job and PHT does their job. And I hear from Rhonda and I hear from you. And I'm like, I don't know. I wish you guys would talk more because you two are the people figuring it out. So maybe the AEA needs to stay out of that process.
We believe this language would help.
I don't see a desire for further questions from my team, so I believe we're ready to move. Oh, we have another.
Sorry, I was chewing over this language and really trying to make sense of the change. Continuing on the thought of the election to enroll wording, I guess when I look at that, the big thing that I don't see, or the biggest loss that I see there to a new hire educator, is the potential to have their insurance coverage start on the first day of the month that they were hired, if they're hired on the first working day of the month. If I'm reading that right, and my hire date was September 1st of the year that I started. So by this language, I could have insurance on my first day. And I recognize that's not necessarily the norm with the way this is worded, but that is a possibility that the new language would exclude, no matter what with the new language, every member would not have insurance until the first day of the following month. So it creates a possibly longer waiting period for new employees to start their insurance than currently is afforded by current language in the contract, which is something that seems to be a step backwards in terms of educator benefits. And we've had a lot of conversation about wanting to attract and retain educators, and every little bit that we can do towards that, I think, helps. So, I'd be interested to see if maybe there was a way to do both of those things.
Thank you, Lem. I think that's a astute observation, and certainly something for consideration.
Thank you. Just to your comment, Lem, I think you might be reading it wrong or understanding it wrong. That's actually the current language that describes the time when the benefits start. The only thing that's been changed, it's no longer the first of the month after they're hired. It's the first of the month after they enroll. So a new member their benefits don't start till September 1st. It doesn't start on the first day of their employment, correct?
For a member starting at the beginning of the year, right, unless their start date were the first day of a month, in which case their benefit would start on the first day of that month. I was hired back when we were starting school after Labor Day. So my first day was September 1st. And so that would have qualified me for insurance. Okay. Yeah. Again, it's probably the exception, not the rule, especially with our current school calendar. But it does seem like that cuts out a small piece of potential for someone to have insurance the first day of work.
Shall we continue on?
I believe so.
All right. So moving on from 205, we had requested some grace on the association's proposal on 175 to do a updated costing analysis, and I think we've have the chance to do that calculation. So I will Lateral to Mr. Ratliff.
All right, thank you. So I really do appreciate the movement on that article. Went from about $12.5 million of total value down to about 2.6, which is about $1 million more than what the current value of that sick leave is. So a lot of movement on that. I did want to say though, the folks watching here in the room, it's the part of the process that's kind of hard is when we're talking about all these things that have different financial impacts and the district is apparently not agreeing to them. It's not that we find value into them or not eventually agree to them, but to the extent that if we agree to all these kind of one-off things that aren't necessarily salary or medical, then by the time we get to those salary and medical articles, there may not be a big pot of money left to fund the increases that may be deserved in those. So not that we're being obstinate or don't want to sign these articles, but we need to have a clearer picture of what that full package is prior to be able to sign off on some of these larger cost items.
Can I ask, what were the assumptions that went into your costing analysis?
For
Like,
175?
in terms of usage. I mean, are you assuming every tier 3 member cashes every available sick day in order
Right,
to
that
arrive
was
at that?
along with the initial proposal when we costed that out, that was the discussion. It's based on the value of it, not necessarily on the usage. So the actual cash out the door would be considerably less. But depending on how rich that goes, there might be a lot more people that participate in it versus what's currently happening.
And I mean, I hear a new costing analysis, but I don't see a counter proposal. I was wondering if we could expect a counter proposal on that article at some point, or I mean, it's great to get a new costing analysis of the maximum possible cost. Uh, for this article. I mean, I do appreciate that, but that is the maximum possible uh, usage, which isn't realistic. So I just wondered if we could expect any sort of counter proposal from the district on that.
So two comments, Christian. One is this may be the analysis may make assumptions about a maximal amount of use, but that is not to be unrealistic. That's because the district who's responsible for financing anything that it agrees to needs to make sure that if usage is far in excess of what we currently view as realistic, that it's still budgeted for adequately. So there is that aspect of needing to be conservative to make sure that there is budgeted funds for all programs with a cost component. And then in regard to whether there'll be a counter, we are still evaluating that. But I would also point back to Mr. Ratliff's comment regarding wanting to have as much sort of clarity and understanding about all of the costing proposals that the association is requesting and kind of what the full picture is to make sure that we're adequately devoting funds where they're going to have the most impact and value for the association, for the parties in this process. The concern is by potentially agreeing to smaller costing items that are still significant, but not, the salary schedule, for example, it potentially robs the ability of the district to negotiate some of the other costing proposals like the health benefit, like the salary schedule. So those are the concerns of the district. And I understand Mr. Ratliff to be indicating this is not a indication of no or of a lack of interest. This is a procedural based concern about wanting to make sure we're going about this in a rational way that has budgeted funds available for everything that the parties want in the contract at the end of this process.
Okay. Yeah, I was just hoping for some sort of back and forth. That was what if we were to caucus, is it possible for y'all to work on that and come back with some counter proposal? Or
I can't commit to anything on behalf of the team as we're sitting here. I can commit that we'll discuss it in caucus.
Okay, yeah.
So any other questions regarding the updated analysis on 175?
No, other than, I mean, I'd love to see what what the analysis would look like based on current usage, but I appreciate that it would be a slightly more generous benefit. And so it might attract a few more people, but I mean, something based on current usage and a rough estimate of what that would look like would be great, rather than a hard, like, this is the maximum possible amount that it could cost. Because I mean, while I appreciate like that is the maximum possible amount of cost, I mean, that's like costing insurance at if every single member all got lung cancer at the same time. You know, I mean, like it's just like they don't you don't cost out insurance rates based on that. You cost it out based on probabilities. So
and I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the concern. I think I am, but is it the association's position that a $2.6 million figure based on the most recent proposal from the association is I think you said unrealistic assessment of usage?
well, I would love to see every tier 3 member cash out everything that they could possibly benefit from. I would love that. However, some of our members have not chosen that. And so something based on current usage, I feel would be a little bit more would add context. Let's just say that. And I'll pass the mic to Len.
So I'm looking at the costing analysis that was provided initially, and I see in the 24-25 column the costing on 175 is 1.57 million, so call it 1.6, fine. And you're saying that with our current counter on 175, that would go up to about 2.6 million. My question is that 1.6 million in 24-25 the maximum exposure or the actual what members? It's the maximum value. Okay. Thank you.
Can I, quick one? I'm a problem solver and I like to think outside the box, and maybe just this change at end of the tables was, I don't know, it might be a bad thing, but so theoretically, if let's say this got signed, the district has expressed the potential, you know, there's only so much money and where it is and what's going to benefit members and retention and that the best. But if the district budgeted the full amount, the 2.5 million, and 1.5 million was used, so that left $1 million budgeted but unused, would the district then be open to paying that out like in May or in the last paycheck to AEA members since it was already budgeted for?
No. Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be part of the contract. And a lot of times we're making assumptions how much money we're going to spend throughout the year. And then as you can see with next year, we have $50 million in our budget off from savings. This is how we generate that savings typically to help support next year's expenditure. So if we went at the end of the year and said, here's all the money we have left, let's go ahead and just pass it out, I wouldn't have the money to fund next year's budget.
All right, so staffing is going through my mind right now with unfilled positions and passing it, moving it forward. Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to think outside the box a little bit.
Andy, you may have shared this already. What was last year's number that was usage? 500, is that about right? 500,000 in.
I think we provided that in response to an information request, so maybe we can go back and verify that. So if we have, we're giving you the same information.
Okay. Wait, I'm sure you did too. And when in the budget, in the line item, is it the average of the last 3 or 5 years that you put in as a line item, or you in the budget for next year, is it the total liability?
Typically it started out as the total liability and then other bargaining groups kind of got into it. So we're using the same budget code to put essentially all the bargaining groups that have this sort of sick leave cash out provision in there, but it is not at the full value, and certainly not at the prospective full value that's being proposed.
Any other questions on 175 or for Mr. Ratliff?
No, originally we did budget for the full value the first year that it was enacted, and it wasn't, it wasn't being used. We didn't really increase that much, but we started putting more groups as they bargained that in too. So we're using the same general pot of money to pay for multiple groups that have access to the same benefit.
All right. So that's our presentation on 205 and an update on the costing for 175. We do have another article, as we indicated, we're intending to discuss. Would you guys like to take a caucus at this point, plunge forward?
Oh, let's hear what you got.
All right. 210 life insurance, heading your way. So 210 life insurance, hopefully everyone has a copy. Just let me know if we need more. This is responsive to the association's proposal with language in A and B, which would have raised those respective limits to $300,000 in each category there. As you'll see from the district's responsive proposal here, under B, we have essentially accepted the language that the association has proposed, but actually raised the upper limit on the amount of insurance available from the requested 300,000 to 500,000 in conversations with the insurers that the district works with. We understand that that is a doable change to the program, and so wanted to offer that in response to the association's expression of interest in seeing that upper limit raised. In regard to the association's request to also increase the limit in paragraph A, you'll see that this proposal does not accept that, but again, I wanted to message, as we have previously and through Mr. Ratliff, that it's not an indication of a lack of interest by the district in continuing a conversation about the association's request. It's recognition of needing to, again, be very mindful of the individual costing proposals and what they represent in the aggregate. So this is what we're prepared to agree to on language at this point, but not attempting to close the door on a further conversation of the proposal under A, if that is something that the association wants to continue to discuss.
Thank you for letting me allowing me to purchase more health care. Or I'm sorry, more death benefit.
I will just bring up one thing that we brought up whenever we first introduced this. I mean, the old language coverage shall be for 3 times the member's annual salary, rounded to the next higher $1,000 to a maximum of $100,000 as described. The current B00 salary is $56,823. And so the least amount a full-time member can make, multiplied by 3, is significantly greater than 100,000. So just it seems like those amounts need to be updated. And so that was our interest in addressing that, because the $100,000 is dealing with salaries that were a long time ago.
And the district has heard those concerns, heard the presentation from the association, and I believe understands where those are coming from. Again, the proposal that you have in front of you is in part contemplating those concerns about the timing of making any agreements on costing proposals. It's not a fundamental or principal disagreement with the motivations that the association expressed about their proposed language under A.
Well, I personally don't have any further questions. Oh, Adam.
Just a
Okay.
question on, I remember, if refresh my memory, but I thought part of the delay in this was you were going to ask the insurer what it would cost if it raised up to what we asked. It did. So as we go through this process, that information would be helpful. That way we could see what costs were attributed to this item as we look to move
Yep.
things around. So I don't know if that's an information request or
I,
how that would work.
Andy, do you have that at your fingertips? I believe it was part of the costing analysis.
We do have that figure. It's been several weeks since I've looked at it, so I don't want to speak off the top of my mind, but in caucus, I will see if I can locate that information and then share it across the table when we come back. If not, we can certainly do it as a written information request response to the association.
Oh, yeah. If y'all could look it up during the caucus and come back with it, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Well, I don't have any further questions, but I would like the opportunity to caucus with our members.
Like 5:35. Should we 6?
Oh, I don't know. I think I mean, like, every time we say we're going to go 20 minutes or 30 minutes, it ends up being 45 minutes. So I'm gonna say 6:15.
That's fine. We'll see you here at 6:15.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Welcome.
Productive caucus, good caucus.
Oh, we worked on an article and we have something to present. So, but we're totally open to whatever order you suggest.
I'm just thinking at top of mind, we do have, I think, some additional information on that additional life insurance.
Oh, cool.
Numbers. So,
oh, that's relevant. Yeah. Why don't we go? Why don't we go with that?
All right. So for the life insurance, I think we had this on our that costing proposal too. As we went back and looked at it, about 314,000 is the current cost of it. The cost really hadn't increased over the years. It's per person, amount. But if you triple the amount of life insurance, that cost triples. There's not a discount for buying more of it, apparently. So it goes from 314 to a proposed 942-ish thousand. So increase about 630.
things.
All right, that helps.
Then if you guys have something that you guys want to present, maybe this would be a good time for that. Otherwise, we can move forward on our side.
Sure, we got something. Cool. We have a counter proposal on 125 salary payments. All right, this is salary payment. So essentially the schedule as to how AEA members will, how often will be paid. Our initial proposal had three different options for how our members could choose to be paid. And we heard the district concerned with those three options. You returned with no change other than striking that some employees hired before June 1st, 2017 could still receive 10 salary payments. You proposed to strike that to put everybody on a single schedule. And we heard your concern. But as you can see from the new proposal, we believe that the single option should be 24 payments a year, so getting paid twice a month, essentially on the 1st and 15th, which is how anybody who has worked outside of this district probably has experience being paid. That's certainly how I was paid in the first 14 years that I taught in Texas and the one semester that I was full-time at UAA. So that's how I've been paid in the rest of my professional life. So we felt like it was time to move to that system. Oh, and we also would appreciate retaining new Part E. We heard the district's concern about retirement contributions and needing a bit more time. But with going to 2 payments a month, we felt like 10 days was a better timeline for transferring TRS funds to the state system.
So thank you for the thoughtful counter and certainly encouraged seeing the movement towards what we think was the district's expressed concerns with previous versions of the language. So want to recognize that and call it out and thank the association for making some progress towards a single payment regime here. So I think the logical next step for the district is to take a real close look at this versus the concerns about the admin lift and other sort of pieces around this to consider it. And so we'll endeavor to do that. I don't see any questions as we're sitting here on the new proposal, but we'll take it under advisement.
I mean, just for my own personal clarification, I mean, are other employees of ASD paid twice a month, or is it every other week? Or I mean, my understanding is most people are paid twice a month, but could you?
Yes, all salaried employees are paid monthly. Biweekly employees that are paid hourly, their payroll is automated by the time clock system, and all that occurs biweekly.
Okay. I mean, in our brief research, it seemed like salaried employees in other areas and other companies are paid twice a month. So, can you give some historical perspective on why salaried employees in ASD are paid once a month? Just curious.
It looks like the answer to that might be not really, as we're
Okay.
sitting here. Certainly,
That's the way it's done because that's the way it's been done, huh?
Yeah, I will say, and it's not apples to apples. I'm not referencing a school district period of employment, but it's not been uncommon in my career to see examples of salaried employees being paid monthly. But again, that's in a different context. So,
Okay.
for whatever that's worth.
Um, and I agree. There certainly are districts that pay this way and districts that pay twice a month. You know, our most close competitor for educators is Matsu, and they pay twice a month. So I think that's notable, especially when we're talking about wanting to retain our teachers. And if they're going to leave here, I think the first place, if they're going to continue in education, they're going to look is probably to the Valley.
And just to tack on to that, I will say that we survey our members pretty regularly to find out what their concerns are. And one recurring concern, ever since I've been involved doing this with the union, is we have a significant number of members saying every single time we do this, when we ask them, what else are your concerns? Why don't we get paid twice a month? Why don't we get paid twice a month? It is a thing that we are asked regularly, and we don't have an answer for that. And so, just in terms of recruitment and retention, I will say that it is something that a significant fraction of our current members are asking.
Yeah, this is helpful, both the back and forth and also an understanding and hearing, the priority for the association and for the membership that helps the district's evaluation of this. So do appreciate that comment in particular.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there where would you guys like to go from here?
Well, that's what we worked on, and that's what we were discussed in our caucus, and we're prepared to pass back. So now we look forward to receiving any of your responses to. We're happy to discuss.
Sure thing. Headed back your direction to counter on 117 for discussion. At risk of ruining the suspense, I'll represent that it is book language for discussion purposes, and I will be handing the mic to Mr. Sunboom for some additional context for why that's the counter proposal at this point.
Thanks, Ryan. Let me start by saying we gave a lot of consideration and did some significant research on the two proposals from the association, the two changes proposed in Article 117. The issue with the addition in paragraph C is that it doesn't reflect the flexibility that is needed to really assess these industry certifications, especially as we enter a time when there might be more CTE teachers entering the district if academies get off the ground. Figuring out that or deciding that an industry cert gets this set amount of hours, we don't believe is going to reflect what we see as we're assessing the qualifications of people in these jobs. And so maintaining that flexibility that we have currently with the process described in Article 120, salary adjustments, which is used for all teachers. It would be the same process for all teachers, same for type C or type M as it is a normal certificated classroom teacher. That's our reluctance on that language. In paragraph E, we will acknowledge that this has been an exception that's been allowed at times due to the unique qualifications and credentials that CTE teachers bring to the district, where we couldn't acknowledge how many hours they'd earned during 1 year of their certification training because it wasn't yet issued, and the certification was the critical part. That was the completion point, the same way you might complete a credit at a college that is counted towards it. We're really looking at that completion point, and due to the industry certification process, that has had to sometimes look at a 2-year window for credits earned, which then has allowed us to, working with the association, of course, to allow someone to move 2 columns, because sure, they devoted that time and probably would have earned the credits in a more traditional academic setting during that first year, but because of the nature of the certification, it takes until that second year where we can recognize those credits and then give the salary movement. And that's really why that exception has been carved out for CTE teachers, where if you look at the language in Article 120, salary adjustments, all other times teachers are limited to movement of 1 column for education or experience credit. So maintaining that, we think, is valuable to the program, especially at a time when we might be looking at different types of professions than we haven't before, and not knowing what those certifications might look like. Of course, we have that process where we work through it. I talked to the talent management team in some detail about what that process looks like, and they've been pretty successful working with the training programs to identify how much time should be considered to get this cert, so we can look back and figure it out. I think the best thing we could tell type C or type M teachers who are concerned about this right now is make sure they're observing the normal process of submitting this for credit in advance, because that really gives us the time to figure that out and help the person understand if this is the one they want, or maybe whether there's something else they might pursue. I know a couple of the problems that we've been trying to correct or resolve are because the certifications were done, they weren't approved beforehand, and then we're trying to make sense of it after the fact for a teacher who maybe lives in a different world than normal classroom teachers. CTE work is unique, of course, and they might not have that same knowledge, experience of all of you working with your regular team of classroom teachers about educational credit, that sort of thing. And I think that deficit can be resolved just with better information out to our type Cs and type Ms.
Thank you, Andrew.
Great. I'm going to pass the mic to our current King Tech teacher.
Hi, thanks. That actually makes sense. We had some discussion about the variability of what's required for some industry standards and industry certs versus other industries. I guess this is maybe more food for thought, given that we will probably from year to year know which CTE programs we're going to be offering also through the academies of Anchorage, if, wherever that goes. Would it be maybe worth considering having the district do something along the lines of like a matrix for like transparency to say for these particular recognized industry certs, these are the commensurate number of hours you would need to get, and this is what that would be. I think part of the language we were looking for is something along the lines of that, to give a little bit more of a certainty of if you get this industry cert, you can reliably understand that this will result in this amount of credit going towards salary advancement, versus going through the process that exists and not being sort of maybe uncertain about exactly what would happen. I think it's particularly going to be important if we're trying to push more CTE within the district for recruiting and retention, to have that as a recognized option for people who might be considering leaving industry to come to this, to come to be educators. To have that level of transparency, I do think is important. So whatever that looks like, I think it's something worth considering.
And thank you for that. I think as we get more of these, as we deal with more certs and trying to figure out the, what this cert actually is and what it takes, we'll build that out a little bit better. I just think historically that hasn't happened due to limited access, or people that don't stick around as long in CTE positions to really even figure out the educational attainment advancement. As we've had more success lately in our CTE groups, I think we'll be able to develop that out. But for now, I think the most important thing you can refer people to is just that contract standard 15 hours is one credit, and that's really what we're looking at when we're trying to make sense of that industry cert, to go back and look at what the actual hours took and then shape it into the credit form that we need for the sake of the educational attainment.
One thing I know, when I was over at KCC and King Tech, something that came up, and I just brought it up here on my computer on the Type M renewal, where a Type M has to have to renew. They need the 3 semester hours of credit, and 135 hours of working in the field to renew. So I know it was brought up by a few instructors where if there's a way where that, if it's 135 hours of training or work experience beyond district employment in their field, in addition to taking credit, they were trying to figure out a way to, if it works for renewal, could they somehow work across the pay scale with that requirement as well, that work requirement they need for recertification, but it works for recertification, but not for salary advancement, that they're required to work outside the district to put in more hours in their field. So, and I know just coming from King Tech, especially with Tier 3, it's been a big issue trying to hold teachers, because a lot of them are going back to industry when they find out about Social Security, which obviously has changed a bit, but it was it's tough. I was on a lot of hiring committees over there, and it was tough to pull people from industry, and anything we can do to encourage people from industry, whether it's at King Tech or as we see the academies develop, which is awesome, because coming from the CTE world, I see the benefits of CTE going to all our high schools. It's like, yeah, this is what we've been doing forever at King Tech and seeing these results. So it's great to see, and anything we can do to encourage members of industry to come in to work with our youth is wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam and Creed and everyone, that the additional information and thoughts for consideration helpful.
Okay, I was giving Lem some space for thought. He requires no more space. uh, Great. I think that that gave us all the information we need to consider the concerns that you presented. I thank you. We appreciate that, and we'll take it back and see what we can do with it.
Well, appreciate that. So that's what we've come out of caucus kind of prepared to discuss, in addition to what we had identified pre-session. But we're here and happy to hear or discuss anything in additional of the associations prepared to bring to the table.
Ooh. Let's see. I believe our team could probably go back and have a decent discussion on 117 based on what we've heard from you, and discuss that, and then come back. So if we could have, I'm gonna look at my team and try to assess the expressions on their faces and go with 20 minutes. Okay.
I think I was also picking that up telepathically. So 20
Yeah,
minutes sounds
20
like the right number.
minutes is
Okay.
what I got.
All right. We'll see you in 20.
All right, so 7:50. Okay, are y'all ready?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity for us to caucus on 117. We had a long discussion on it and realized that what we needed was to have more discussion and a better understanding of some of the issues. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to pass the mic to my team members who can, I believe, articulate those issues a little bit better than me.
Well, as Christian said, we had a very good discussion, but we also found ourselves at a bit of a point of, I think, confusion as well. The language that we proposed in 117 was based on what we understand to be current practice. And yet what we heard tonight was that that may or may not be current practice. And so I guess the first question I would have with regards to C and industry certification is, what is the current process for the district to give credit for industry certification when a new member on a type C or type M certificate is hired?
I can probably provide a general overview, but I think depending on how detailed the group is looking for answers, we'd want to have probably Peggy Rankin here from talent management. I would say current practice is, as I described previously, which is they do their best to align what are round pegs with the square box that we have for classroom teachers' academic credits. They're trying to make sense of what type of professional development was necessary to get that certification and look at the time commitment. Really, it's the time commitment that they're always going to be looking to figure out the credits. And so if they can figure out that, it's an easy answer. When it's a bit more obscure, perhaps, in what information they're able to get from the organization, put on the training, then they're, again, trying to make the best sense of it they can. But I think a lot of that gets resolved, like I mentioned previously, if members know better to get that information like they're supposed to, get it approved in advance, because then that gets answered in advance.
Right, but this article particularly speaking to initial placement, so they're not getting pre-approval for anything because this is evaluating their certifications that they're bringing in at time of hire. So, and we would welcome if you want to bring Peggy or another subject matter expert in to speak to this, we would welcome that explanation or some additional insight there. But really, we're struggling to understand, if the district prioritizes operational efficiency, which we've heard lots of times and we value and think that's an important thing. It seems like there should be a clear process for that evaluation that also should, which I haven't heard anything of yet, like also have a process by which a member can appeal that and address that if the initial evaluation by whomever is doing that doesn't seem to them to properly value their certification and the effort they put into it. We understand, that there's a variety of different types of industry certification, that those require a variety of different amounts of time and investment. And frankly, with industry certification, it's not always seat hours, so to speak, or clock hours. It's proficiency, and it's, attaining the certification by showing that you can do whatever the thing is. And so that being the case, my understanding is that we have members who come in and they get, little credit for a high level certification sometimes because they do not have, because the organization doing the certification doesn't evaluate it based on number of hours. They evaluate based on competency, proficiency, which is a much more common, I think, industry standard with the types of industries we're talking about here. And as the district continues to value and elevate career and technical education with academies and other pieces like that, I think there may need to be additional conversation and thought put into how we value those educators and value their experience and expertise and what they're bringing to the district and what they're bringing for educating our students. by valuing them and paying them sufficiently, and also to that extent, actually being able to recruit and retain high quality industry educators by honoring their certifications. So all that said, I guess if there's any additional information you can provide on how that process works, or how a member could, appeal if they think it's not appropriate what they're being assigned, would love to hear that.
I think at this point, it's probably makes the most sense to invoke the subject matter expertise of Ms. Rankin, and get responsive information to the issues that you've raised on this. So we'll endeavor to follow up on that in regard to that question specifically.
Okay, thank you. I'll move to E and just ask a similar question, but it sounded like from what Andrew said before the break, before the caucus, that the language in E is something that is done commonplace for educators who do earn certification, and if it's enough hours to justify 2 lanes in a year, and they weren't able to get credit along the way for it, that is granted to them. So I guess I would ask, what is the district's hesitation or reluctance to include that in their counter, if that's already current practice?
So I can speak to my understanding of the conversation around that, which is, and Andrew will correct me if I'm misstating any of his previous comments on this, but that it's the flexibility and the case by case sort of analysis that will allow us for is part of the district's interest there. And I think also more generally, to what I understand your point to be, and well taken, and Andrew also spoke to this earlier, the more experience the district has in digesting and considering industry certifications of different types and kinds, it also occurs to me that there potentially could be industry certifications which are not yet available and that no one here is currently thinking about, which potentially would be implicated by this language. So I think that thought process and the experience on both sides of the table will be instructive over time to help resolve some of these questions about the outer bounds of the industry certification.
Okay, I appreciate that. Although I don't really think that it speaks to the consistency and operational efficiency concern of, if an employee earns enough credits in a program, or earns enough hours equivalent to credits, they would be worth 2 lanes of movement. Why would some employees get that and others not?
I might be able to speak to that question, Lem. I think your statement is actually how we want it to be, which is this is a unique exception that's special to the Type C and Type M certificates because of the way the credential occurs. In the way that this language is drafted, though, it has some issues, of course. It fails to identify that it already has a process to address this, and an employee would get that idea, through that approval process for the credits. If they were to turn it in and get pre-approval, they'd go, hey, well, you're not going to be able to show us proof of credits next year. Perhaps this might be a situation where you'd get that benefit of the second year. I think the real problem with the language from the district's perspective is this gives the impression that an employee makes that decision about whether they're going to move the 2 columns. And I don't think we want to set someone up into a situation where they go, oh, I'm going to turn this in 2 years and I'm going to get 2 column movements because that's what the contract says. Yeah, but this doesn't actually fit, right? This doesn't spell out all the details that would be needed to know if someone's going to qualify for that 2 column movement. And it's awfully consequential to send someone off a 2-year training program for them to come back and realize that they didn't fill out the form and wasted time or didn't do what they're supposed to do to get the credit they needed. I worry in its boldness for an exception that's actually pretty rare that you send people down the wrong path. And that's really why we're hesitant about something. Like, I acknowledge that, yes, it's happened. I don't know how frequently it's happened. There's definitely been situations with Type C and Type M industry certs where they've had to do that. But I don't think, again, the more we can rely on that standard formula, the better people will observe the process and the better people will understand when they might need to seek something unique, which has happened a couple times in the past years. I think Courtney was working with an employee where they had to do that. But again, the more variables we create around this, I think the more difficult it's going to be for someone to understand. If we can just start from the standard, here's what it looks like, turn in your form, get the approval. The rest of the stuff sorts it out. And I would say this paragraph or this section's about salary adjustments, and this article 117 is about salary placement. So it also might not be in the right place.
Totally appreciate all that, Andrew. Does E need pre-approval just like I would need pre-approval for the courses I take?
I think the rule should always be pre-approval, because when people don't do that, it turns into a mess trying to clean it up after the fact. My understanding with a couple of these unique type C, type M, they've been able to clean it up after the fact, but I'd like Peggy to speak to that process, because I know her and Debbie Olmsted were heavily involved with one where they were trying to make sense of something a while after the fact, and did figure it out, I think, with this exact provision, allowing the person to move 2 columns once the cert got recognized. But again, I worry in getting into these variables that might be rarer than we know. We, again, set people out on the wrong path with some confidence in this thing without necessarily getting the approvals they need to be on the right path.
So I don't know if that answered my question. If I'm going to take courses, I have to have it pre-approved in MLP and go through that process. I assume, maybe wrongly so, that type C and type M's, like, they have to have the same pre-approval before they go and jump and get credit for their lane changes as well. I can't imagine that you're not doing that process. So it seems, I guess, I think it'd be great to have, right, the subject experts in here to speak to it maybe in more detail, Andrew, but I would be shocked to hear that, one, these folks are not having to go through a pre-approval process, that they're just kind of going out there doing what they think is right, potentially getting denied. I'm not sure we're getting many calls on that. So there must be a pre-approval process. Courtney and Jessica could speak to that if they're hearing those cases. But it seems that if this is current practice, both of these situations, and Peggy can speak to that it is in everyone's favor that that's articulated well ahead of time, and that we can follow that in the contract. I mean, we're so specific in so many areas when it comes to moving lanes and how we put people on the salary schedule. So I'm a little bit concerned that maybe we didn't do our due diligence prior to this conversation, so that if we're not doing this, this is our AEA, this is our understanding, because this is what we've been told through prior by Debbie. If this isn't what's happening, boy, what is happening, right? Like, we got to know. And if it's inconsistent and you guys have the flexibility to do whatever you want based on whatever certification is out there, that is alarming to me in my position, because that does not seem to follow the consistent practice and processes that you guys follow for every other position within the district. I mean, everybody else has it very clear what they need to do. So I'll just leave it at that. And so, yeah.
Okay. I think um I think that's what we had to ask, and I think it's left as I think we both agreed that the subject matter experts need to be consulted on the details of this one. So
Certainly,
we-
we'll have that conversation, and we'll have some further communication and notification if we're gonna make a presentation with a subject matter expert as we've agreed to do previously. But yeah,
Okay.
that's my understanding as well.
Okay, fantastic. Because currently, as it stands, I mean, like we haven't sent anything across, and so technically we're holding the article, but just to get that conversation going. I mean, if y'all could have a conversation and then bring back what you learned, or maybe bring Peggy Rankin in,
Sure.
something like that.
Nope. I want to assure you that the questions have been heard, and appreciate the presentation and the questions. We'll follow up internally. Obviously, can't speak for Ms. Rankin's schedule or availability, but we will seek her expertise in response to some of what's been raised here this evening. I think we're good on our end here, and don't want to preempt any additional comments or presentations that you guys want to make, if any, this evening.
Yeah, we have just a little bit of time left, and so I wondered if I know that anytime we've had discussions about cost items like life insurance this evening, or especially what was it, 175 supplemental retirement accounts. There's been a recurring comment that sort of the cost items need to be considered in totality, which I appreciate, but currently AEA is holding 5 articles and ASD is holding 16. In total, we TA'd 7. So making some progress, but ASD is currently holding 16, and I was wondering which of those 16 you might consider as non-cost items so that we could make a little bit more progress.
And so what I can tell you at this point to represent that that's been a topic of conversation, particularly for us tonight in our caucus room, in terms of focusing on returning some of those items in a package to start to focus more specifically on some of the costing items. So I'm not prepared to give you a list of specifically which articles that might entail, but please know that that is where the conversation is at on our side of the table on that. And we anticipate, as we've been doing, communicating with you guys before the next session about where we anticipate going with article presentation for our next bargaining session.
All right, so we can anticipate some stuff next time on that maybe don't have to be bundled in terms of like total cost, and might come across you, but you said maybe as a package.
Yeah, and Christian, I admire your ability or interest in pinning me down on this, but I'm going to continue to resist. But please be assured, I hear the interest. We're not looking past it. We'll focus real energy, as we've been doing between all bargaining sessions, on getting organized to try to move this forward, this conversation forward on all articles as best we can.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all the questions and the back and forth, especially on Article 117 and 175. So we
Likewise,
appreciate that.
really appreciate the presentation this evening and the attendance, both in person and online. And yeah, thanks for your advocacy for your members.
All right, thanks a lot.
And chocolates.
Well, of course.
Not least of which. Thank you.